Darrow, and an 1882-83 survey and an 85 publication. First thing, the foundation of this wall, there was a wall here. There was a wall from here right up to the village hall. Now, that was taken down in 1947, and the stone was used to build the gable end of the village hall and also to build the wall that separates the tennis court from the bowling green. Also, it built a shelter down here which is gone now because the field's been developed since, and there was a building on this end of the bowling green which was used to put the machinery in before the pavilion was built. So that wall was taken down by a farmer and a Mr. Holmes, who was a very active villager with a horse and cart. So that is quite interesting in its own.
Why did you take it down, John?
Well, they wanted a stone.
Oh, okay.
And they wanted the Brightwell to be like it is, rather than enclosed. From here we'll move to the water trough. Can somebody wheel my barrow? Yeah, good.
It's improved my level of fitness doing the bowling.
These two trees here were planted by Cagenvin, who was rector in 1890s. The others were taken down and some more was planted in the 70s. So these are much older than the other trees. The interesting thing here is that this grave is the grave of George Marshall. Now, why was George Marshall famous? He was the first station master on Byfield Station. Now, George Marshall had 3 daughters before he came to here, and they were all born in different places. But all those places had stations on the Great Central Railway. So the last place he came before he came to Byfield was Fenny Compton, and Fenny Compton has got 2 railways, or did have 2 railways. They had the East and West Junction Railway and the Great Western. So George Marshall always worked on the Great Western prior to going to Fenny Compton. He then became the station master here in the 1890s when the railway came to Byfield. Now, the interesting thing about George Marshall and his career, I believe that the SMJ, Stratford Midland Junction Railway, which was standard gauge, was the first standard gauge railway that he probably worked on, because prior to that it was wide gauge on the Great Western. So Fenny Compton would quite possibly be Great Western prior to that. So that was 7 foot half an inch down to 8 foot 6.5 standard gauge. So that is quite interesting. So that is George Marshall. There are actually 3 station masters buried in the churchyard. All of them cover the period that Byfield Station was a station. So you've got George Marshall, you've got a Mr. Trenfield and a Mr. George Holton, and George Holton actually retired in 1965 when the railway closed, and he was my uncle, George Holton. So that is interesting in itself.
And you're related to Alan Holton originally?
Yeah, Alan Holton is his son. The first grave here is that one. So they came up here and went down again burying. Now that is the only grave in the churchyard that's got the Royal British Legion cipher. So that's quite interesting. There used to be a building across here, and obviously when they bought the land that was taken down. So if we walk, if you come along here, and I will go down because there's a grave. I've got to just find the grave. That grave over there is the grave of Jeremiah Tomlin and his wife Martha. Now, what is interesting in Jeremiah Tomlin opened the first church school in Byfield in 1780. He got a degree at Oxford University at 19 years of age. So he was quite a clever lad. Now I've got a very interesting document here. It's one that I transcribed from a book that Jeremiah Tomlin put a lot of detail in. The size of the book was that. Right? Now you hand this round, and what I suggest you do is just open. I've got my transcript and the original. So what I suggest you do is just look at it just at random and see what sort of detail there is in there, because that's very interesting. The other thing, I'm going to give you a bit of a test now. This is the only test. Look at that church clock and go round and look at the other side clock and tell me what the difference is.
Then do, because he's clearly a very, very clever man. We're talking about those now in a kind of
The numeral.
Which numeral?
4.
For correct. One has got four single digits, the other is 1V. Right. Now also, if you look up, there is a lump of cement underneath the face of the clock.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is a new clock was put in, well, with two faces, because the old clock did not have a face on the other side. It only had a face on this side. Now if you look underneath, there's a round of cement, and that's where the original clock spindle came through. So if you see an old photograph of the church and the clock, the bottom of the clock's on that ridge, that is the old clock. It was put on for the Queen Victoria's Jubilee. There's a stone over there in the graveyard, and it's the ashes of the last doctor to practice from the old doctor's house on the corner of High Street and New Terrace. It's an annex to the boys' school now, but the reason why it was the last one, when he passed away, his wife still wanted to live there. So the new doctors coming in wanted to find premises, and they used the village hall for a bit, which is quite interesting. Now, as we walk down there, you know what this is called?
Gooseberry Lane.
Gooseberry Lane. And the only people who call it Gooseberry Lane now are the church authorities. Nobody else calls it Gooseberry Lane. Minor steps. Now you've got to get your memory clicking now, because there's a wall at the bottom of the churchyard, a short wall as you walk down this path. Everybody with me with that? Yeah. Yeah, so that short wall, which comes along the footpath, there was a wall from here to there, across. Now I've got somewhere Where's the wheelbarrow? You can actually see the wall on this map.
Oh, here we are. Where are we? There's the church. Ah.
There's the wall down the bottom of the stream, look. And this is where we're stood.
Right.
So there was a wall across there. The ground, which is now the Brightwell, and I'll explain to you in a minute about the Brightwell, but that was allotted to the curate in the enclosure, right? This part from here down was also allotted to the curate. So Brightwell and this land was allotted to the curate. Right, now his name is Reverend Mr. Copeland. Right, and he is buried underneath the low altar in the church. Yeah, now why is Reverend Mr? Because you can't be a Reverend and a Mr. You're either Mr. Smith or Reverend Smith. And the reason for that is the rector would say to him, there's only one rector here and it's me. And I'm the Reverend. And so he had to be Reverend Mr. And I've never heard that anywhere else. All right, we'll now walk down. So we're going down Gooseberry Lane. This stream is called the Cornbrook Stream, and it starts at Blackdown across. Well, that's where this starts. Now, we would all realise that if you look at a stream, it meanders. Now, this stream doesn't meander. The reason for that is it's man-made. It's man-made. The stream used to go across the middle of the Brightwell and actually connect to the stream which is now culverted under the Brightwell. All right, mate.
Not so bad.
Can you get past? Without... Hello, boys. So this land originally was not a burial ground, because of the wall across it. So the burial ground was the other side of the wall. And the church required more space for burials. So they took the wall down. The snag is that they started burying on the plot before they took the wall down. And there's a gardener, surname, I don't know if it's lady, one side of the wall, and a gardener, male, the other side of the wall. Now, it was purchased by Brightwell, and Mr. Brightwell actually bequeathed it, the parish, and he made a stipulation that it was actually named Brightwell in memory of his son that was killed in the First World War. So that is the reason for that. The big expansion, initially it was sublet by the parish council to a chap called Checkley. Now Checkley had a saddleback sow in this field, and the interesting thing that the Mackenzie family lived in these cottages. So Norman Mackenzie's granny used to cook the meal, leftovers and potato leftovers and things like that, and she used to come out here with a bucket and hit the bucket with a stick, and the sow came at 100 miles an hour. Now this stream actually joins the other stream along here. Now they reckon if you put water in there, it takes quite a long time. Pouring water into the stream will take at least a month to reach the sea at the Thames estuary. If it is not consumed, as it winds its way via the Cherwell, the Ices and the Thames, it is said it is possible that it passes through 6 lots of kidneys during that journey. Now we haven't got proof of that, but it's quite a good guess. Yeah. Now the other interesting thing that I'll tell you, and you'll remember it for the rest of your life, Whelan's 1874 Directory of Northampton states, Northamptonshire singly is independent as to water, for all its rivers take their rise within its boundaries. You see, well, stood here we're about 500 above sea level, so the water's going to run that 500 foot into the Thames estuary. Now the Brightwell was developed in 1947, but did not include that bit over there. It only went to the middle. Sadly, they were not that technical, because what they did, they levelled this field and put the soil underneath the bowling green to elevate that to get it level, and underneath the tennis courts to get them level. And that was only 2 courts, and the bowling green was only 4 rinks at the time. Now the reason why that wasn't a very good idea, because between that block of concrete and up there was no fall at that stage. There was no fall, so therefore that was very damp, and the football club played on it for a couple of years, but it was just too wet. Anyway, when the railway closed, the parish council had the opportunity of purchasing that field, so the parish council paid 1,900 for the field, and after that they bought the station for 4,000. So now the parish council controls 12.5 acres in one curtilage, which includes the allotments. So it goes right down to the allotments, right around here, and then when we were going to develop it, we didn't want it to look as though it was only for organised sport. So we insisted that there was a wooden walk put round the top, which everybody uses. And so they take the dogs round. It's super, really. It's a picture of what it was. So if you stand here and look there, that is what you would have seen. That is the 4-rink bowling green, if you look on that photograph there. Now the difference between that and today is the dress and the sex. Not what they're having, but what they look like. They're all men,
Yeah.
no ladies. The first building that was put here was a scout hut. Now the milkman was John Cook. His sons had just put this magnificent practice netting up. They're very, very, very good people, both the son and the father. And actually the father paid for that to be done and had the money back. There's not many people do that. Yeah, but you can see, you know John Cook. Yeah. That's what he would do if he said he would do it. Now John Cook was a smashing bloke, he'd do anything, until you got him to a meeting. And he's the most argumentative bugger that ever walked this. So can you cut that out? Now, it was suggested to the scouts that they raised the base level. And the scouts actually bought some stone and stored it the other side of Twizel Bridge and never used it. Now, if you get a trouble with the culvert under the Farndon Road and that blocks and the water goes over the road to relieve it, it puts a foot of water into the scout hut. So if they'd have used the stone which they had, they wouldn't have had that problem. But you can't win them all. People will say, what sort of village is Byfield? Well, it's got a lot of pluses, and one of them is all of this was developed without borrowing any money. The stream is under here, 900 mil culvert. For those who don't understand that language, it's 3 feet. So the diameter of the pipe is 3 feet. And there's drainage systems. There's 2 drainage systems, one on this side, 80 mil drains at 5 metre centres. So you go 5 metres, one drain, one drain, one drain. And then that runs into a 100 mil interceptor. So that collects the water and it goes into the pipe down here. And they would not put drains over the culvert. So there's 2 systems. And the other system is exactly the same. The 100 mil pipe goes about where that shed is. Well, it's a shelter. It goes round and into the pipe here. Hello, Rover. Yeah. So the drainage is good. I think the problem when you develop these places, you probably haven't got too much topsoil near the, and clay won't drain unless it's encouraged. And Russ Mallis is probably the only person in the country to get 2 pavilions built in, how long was it, Bob? 5 years, 4 years. So this one was built first for 70,000. That was built second for 90,000. Yeah.
What's that?
Well, half a crown corner, you know, you go on the top of the hill and the gradual road goes round like that. Yeah. Well, that is the altered half a crown corner. It used to go like that and like that. Oh. So that is half a crown corner. Now, why it's called half a crown corner, give me 2, Bob, and I'll tell you. Right. So, going back to Russ Mallis, I mean, that is unbelievable to get 2 pavilions in 4 years. No, it's half a cutting. Yeah.
The railway was down
Yeah,
this level.
yeah, I'll explain that. That bank there was formed in the 1880s because this railway was built in the 1880s. It was a Stratford Midland Junction, because Bridget Buchanan Wollaston, when she was on the council, she was in charge of future village development, and she actually was responsible for planting 1,000 trees in Byfield. And all those are Bridget Buchanan Wollaston trees. I don't know whether that oak is, I don't think it is. But the problem with Byfield, it had an ironstone. So on that side of the village, there was a lot of trees pulled out to get the iron ore up. And on the corner of Marston Road and Boddington Road, there are some chestnuts, and Bridget planted those. Because we were discussing it, and I said, Bridget, we haven't got enough courting trees. She said, courting tree? What a courting tree? I said, well, under the spreading chestnut tree. So we've now got a few chestnut trees. And we've got some there, there's one in here, and there's one on the Five Ways Junction. So Bridget, brilliant she was. We had 9 councillors, and we were lucky that they all were allotted jobs which they liked. So, and Bridget was just the person. She's buried on the churchyard with her husband.
Did you plant those cherry trees in Banbury Lane? You know, they've got protection orders on them.
Probably, I don't know. I can't remember. It's 1,000 trees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember someone saying they were specially planted, but
Oh, the thing that I was going to mention, see that line of trees there?
Yeah.
Byfield had a preservation society. Now they were nice people and they had oak trees, but they were not very technical because they planted that line of trees right on top of a main sewer.
Oh, no. Oh, it'd break us up, wouldn't it?
Yeah, so one would hope, because the trees are getting big, that the pipe is far enough down, it must be, else it wouldn't be working. So that's all on that side of the village, your side, that side of the village, all their waste comes underneath those trees. I went to school on a steam train. I went one term on a bus and then I left the school. I was of the age to leave. But from when I started, 1947, I went on a steam train. And we weren't very good really, because we used to play havoc. Because the carriages were all single compartments, no control of the children. And it was not unknown for boys to get out of the carriage door when the train was going along to get in the next carriage where the girls were. That was not unknown. The other thing we used to do, which is terrible really, the seats were horsehair based, and the stuff was horsehair. So we used to get next to the guard's van, pull a bit of horsehair out, put it on the floor and set light to it. Now horsehair smells to high heaven when it's burning, so we used to then throw it out the window before we got to the next station, and we were very amused at the guard trying to find out where this funny smell was coming from. And quite often we were called to the headmaster's office. I'd say, all those who come on the train into my office, and then I'd say, who flushed George West's hat down the toilet and things like that. Yeah, those were the days. Kids don't do things like that now, do they? Right. That clock was put on in memory of Keith Anderson, an excellent sports supporter and village hall supporter of Byfield, and his name's on the face. This was put in memory of Mick Moyce. He was a lot to do with the cricket. Nothing to do with I was president of the cricket club for 44 years, never played cricket. That must be a record. Yeah, we're now going down onto the track bed. We're now on the railway track bed. All railways. The base was Hart's Hill stone, right, from Leicestershire. Yeah, and the reason why they use that is because it's weatherproof. If you put ironstone, that wouldn't stop like that. It'd be mush. So that has been here. That has been here since 1880s. That piece of stone. So we're now walking along the track bed. There will be two lines here. I don't know whether you're technical on railways, but the up line always goes to the head city or town of the railways. So if you're going to London, the up line's London. The down line's from London. Ironically, in Byfield, when you're going on the train, you're going down to London, but actually you're going up. The first thing that was here, there was a hut, but it was only for workmen's tools, plate layers' tools. There was a hut there. Now it's now getting very difficult to locate certain things on the line. Train went into the station down there. So that is the platform. That is the platform. So you've got a platform that side, and there's some left there, so that the trains went in and out here. Now down here somewhere there's a square pipe. There's a square pipe. The big water tower was over the other side, close to the road. So they used to pump water from the stream into that, and that was the master that fed this. And I probably will look in here and...
What's that from? Is that just a piece?
What we're doing now, we're now going into the goods yard. These are the levels they would be. That's the platform. That would be like that. In here. A line went in there. This concrete here, yeah, in the First World War, at Byfield Market, they sold 1,000 sheep and 300 cattle in the First World War. And they were driven from Five Ways, the market, along Church Street to here, and then put on 50 special trucks in 3 special trains. Now I've never proved it, but I would assume it was for feeding the troops. So we needn't go to the other side of the hedge, but there was some red bricks against the hedge here. Now those red bricks were part of the building which actually enclosed the perishable goods when they were delivered. So they used to come down in here, back up, and then load motor vehicles. Now also here, that under one of these bushes is the base of the old wooden jibbed crane, and the wooden jib crane had a handle so there's nothing technical about it, and it was a wooden jib crane. So the parish council bought this for 4,000. British Rail were reluctant to sell it because I think at the time the railways were closing, they were selling land too cheaply. So somebody at the top said wool, wool, wool. And we actually employed Reg Prentice, who crossed the House, if you remember. He was Labour and became Conservative, and he was our MP, and we got in touch with him and we bought it in 3 weeks. There are a tremendous lot of people in here, as you would imagine. They're the bricks. Because sadly, when they were burying here, they were trying to bury it on the building. It was just on the edge of it. Now this grave here, was the first grave that was put in here, the first interment. Now that is interesting because the parish council was the burial authority at the time, and they'd got to find a burial ground in the parish. They had trial holes before I was ever anything to do with it, behind the rectory, but the trouble is with that ground, it's ironstone, and you can bury it on ironstone, but it costs a lot to dig the graves. So one member, Dennis Judd, he said to me, "John, why don't you buy the station?" So we bought the station, had trial holes, and that's why this is here. Now, Fred Orton, he lived in Dole's Hill, Woodford Road, and he lived with a family. He wasn't married, he lodged with a family, and the lady of the house got infirm and he looked after her better than a son. And when he said to me, and at the time we were still burying on the churchyard, but luckily we'd had this consecrated by the Bishop of Brixworth, and so we could bury on here. So Fred Horton worked on the railway. His first job was putting destination labels under trucks at Aston Wall siding. So 3 years before he died, he rang me. I was chairman of the parish council, and he said, "John, I want burying on the station." Right, and luckily we'd had it consecrated, and Fred was actually buried here before the church burial ground was full, because it was his request. That is Brian Haynes' father, and he's fairly famous for a number of things. He's famous for one thing: he planted the aspen as a tree. See that one over the top? That's an aspen. And their leaves will flutter when all the others are still. He worked on the woodyard, and this is the woodyard. And his two brothers actually put the fence round when we made it a burial ground. This is an interesting one. Thomas Lane. Now Thomas Lane was an engine driver on the ironstone, but more importantly, his father worked in the woodyard. And I remember him, he was about knee-high to a grasshopper. That's a good country saying, isn't it? Yeah. He was about that high, and he used to control 5 shires pulling round timber into here. His father. Tom Lane's father. These, Nigel Buchanan Wollaston was the potter in Byfield, and he produced, at the Jubilee, he produced 300 mugs which the parish council gave to all the children that were of school age. This is interesting to read. Nigel Richard Buchanan Wollaston, 10/12/21, 24/2/83. Actor, navigator, farmer, lecturer, potter in Byfield from 1975. How happy is he born and taught, that service not another's will, whose armour his honest thought, and simple truth his utmost skill. Marvellous. There was here, I think the block's still in, there was the old sawmill, used to work by steam here. So the big trees came in and got cut up here. And of course, it was handy for the station. They used to load trunks of wood and that. So this, when this became a burial ground, Humphreys of Banbury bought a hearse free of charge and went round here so we knew what size the circle it'll be. Because the trouble with the hearse, they're long wheelbase. So this round is what was done by Humphreys. The Twizzle Bridge. Everybody knows where the Twizzle Bridge is, don't they? Well, it's in the Twizzle, believe it or not. Now this photograph was taken near the Twizzle Bridge, to the Stratford side of it. Now, the thing about that picture is, as you can see, the engine's going down, and it appears that the back carriage is going down the other way. Now, the reason for that is the highest point on the Stratford and Midland Junction Railway, 513 feet here. What do you think that is?
Miniature. Coal yard.
No, it's got Russell's truck in it. Look. That actually looks to be a photo of the station. Well, it's not. It's a photo of a model of the station. And the model was made by a chap from Northampton. I'll get his name in there. Because I gave him a photograph of one of Russell's trucks being it, and he actually put the truck in the picture.
Wow.
Now that is the water tower,
Oh, yeah.
which supplied the slave one, as what I told you about. And that was the bridge that this road went over. Now, you all know about the bridge down Pit Lane, some call it Muddy Lane. The railway bridge collapsed. A 6-wheeled lorry with concrete rings to sink a well was going down there, and its front axle went on the bridge, and the bridge collapsed and it went down. Now, luckily, the driver, right, was not injured, because the angle of where the lorry, the things went over the top of him. Bloody great rings. Yeah. Do you know that all these other bridges, what are they like? Do they want looking at, you know? And anyway, they decided that this bridge, which was here, which is not there now because they've knocked it down, that bridge was taken down. And so there is a gas pipe, a yellow gas pipe, running through this station with no gas in it. So somebody in the future, 100 years, will find a pipe and they won't know what the hell it is. We talked about Fred Orton. You remember me talking about Fred Orton? The first man to be buried there. There is a photograph of Fred Orton's grave on its Todd. It was Fred's wish when he departed to be buried here where life really started. Up here, this is the, we'll walk across and go back down that way if you're happy to do that. This is the goods entrance to the station. So there was a line coming along here that came out of the station. Here there was a weighbridge. Now this weighbridge was not a weighbridge like we think of a weighbridge now. It was just a single axle weighbridge. So it was only about 6 foot long and wide enough to take the track. So what had happened is a person would come in, weigh unladen, pick something up, weigh back laden, or the other way round. That's the reason for it being in that position. This is all the wood yard. Now, when I was a lad, they used to tip tons and tons of sawdust, and this was always on fire because sawdust. So occasionally I had to get Woodford Fire Brigade.
So that the naughty boys you burnt the horse out.
The allotments have always been allotments. So the whole of this here was wood yard, that was the station yard. Original post. Now the water tower was fed from the stream here, and it was pumped up into the water tower, first using a donkey going round and round. And the story goes that the railway men used to go and pinch a horse out of a field, take the donkey out and put the horse in, because it used to do it quicker. But whether that is true or false, I don't know.
I can't see.
Give us a fiver and I'll think about it.
I'll give you £4.75.
No, this...
And some horsepower.
Yeah, so we've come off the bridge, really. We're going down as it would be. You see some of these fences, some of these fence posts are original. They're unbelievable. The station water supply, obviously from the stream, was suitable for washing things, flushing toilets, everything bar drinking. So what they used to have to do was to fetch drinking water from Byfield House. So when they wanted to brew up, they used to go and get it from there. Now in the 1990s, water was put in by the parish council from up there to here. That's the main point. Yeah. Here's the pond, look, if you want to see on a map, that's the pond. Right. And that's the bridge that we'll have a look, tell you where that is now. So this is... Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yeah, I meant to show you that. That was the bowling green when it went into disuse. So they had tug of wars on it.
Sacrilege.
I remember distinctly there was a bike shed here, just here. So people used to put the bikes in there. Along here was toilets. And we used to play football with a tennis ball here before we got on the train. Yeah. And this, the offices of the station were here. The wall was about here. So you got gents' toilets, you'd got the ticket office and the ladies' toilet because you went in the building to go to the ladies. No sex equality there, you see, the men had to stand out in the wet. Interesting, the chap called Billy Grubb was a signalman. Now Billy Grubb was a bit of a character. His sister, landlady at the White Lion pub, which is along the end here. Well, Billy, because it was single line, they had to have a staff, so it was impossible to have two trains on the line because the staff system wouldn't allow it. And Billy used to go along to the pub on his bike and he'd have a pint in the window and he'd put the Stratford signal at stop. So the train would come from Stratford and stop and the driver would go toot toot, and Billy used to get off on his bike and come along and pull him into the station. Now that's what you call rural systems. He also used to take bets. He used to work for a bookmaker. I don't know whether he actually worked for a bookmaker and happened to be a signalman, or whether he was a signalman and happened to be a bookmaker. Now Billy had a garden in here and he used to keep chickens. How official that was, I don't know. But he kept chickens on railway property. And along here somewhere there's an old plum tree and an apple. Yeah, that's a billy grub tree. That's a billy grub tree. That's Billy Grub's plum tree. And the railway's been closed since '65. And along here there was an apple tree. But you had some village characters then, you see. Unbelievable.
Signal box for that haircut.
Old Dick used to stop the train along here and go and pick Brussels out of farmer's field.
That's it, it's in a quick 4-hour stage.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the other tree. So look how old that is. We've got a picture of Billy Grubs in the system, I think. So I'll just run through my notes to see if there's anything interesting that I have missed. The other interesting thing about the railway was on the Stratford Midland Junction they had a road railer, right, which was quite exceptional. It was a bus, right, that went on the road and the rail, and it had an eccentric cam system that you could put the rail or the road to. So what it used to do is to come through Byfield and go to Stratford to the Welcome Hotel, and they used to swap the wheels over. It was quite a quick job apparently, and the passengers would stay on it and then they'd go from the rail, stay on the bus, go to the Welcome, and the other way round. The only problem that he was the suffragan business. Well, they've got two in the library at Daventry, and I took it to him, and you'd think that I was giving him the earth day. He said, I was in there, I was in there, I was in there. Yeah.
Well, I used to work for an auctioneer. I used to do auctions there, farming.
Yeah. You're a good old boy. And we marched along the road, and then they went under canvas.
Americans got on one day.
Tiny fingers, 20 tiny toes, 2 angel faces, each with a turned up nose. One looks like mommy with a cute little curl on top, and the other one's got a big bald spot exactly like his pop, 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 pop. Pop, pop, I put on the light in the middle of the night and whispered, dear, let's go. He grabbed a sock and called the doc. He told me, don't be slow. He got me there with time to spare, and then he sat on pins until the doctor shook his hand and told him, you've got twins. 20 tiny fingers, 20 tiny toes, 2 angel faces, each with a turned up nose. One looks like mommy with a cute little curl on top, and the other